Welcome back to the 105. It is time to stamp a six-pack of Andrew Ivins' favorite players in the class of 2025. Drew, I came up with this segment. I'm excited about it. I'm sure you are ready to stop talking about 2025 and all these high school players as the last update comes up next week. But it's the best time to do it, right? You think about everything that you've seen, our team's seen over the last couple of weeks, over the last 2 to 3 years of scouting these players, which is pretty crazy. But the All-American Bowl, the UA game, the Alabama-Mississippi, the Shrine Bowl, you go down the list, right? It's a great time for us, live exposure, to really get to see these guys button it up in our final rankings and stamp our opinion, which is what we're going to do here. You're going to do here. So I'm going to ask you, who is your first stamp going to in the class of 2025?
Yeah, I try to add some flavor here, Cooper. Not talk about the same 4 to 5 names that we do every week. And the first guy that comes to mind, and he wasn't at any of these All-Star games because he's injured, is Jonah Williams, who is at Texas, our #1 ranked safety, my #1 freak, Cooper. Remember, if we go back to the summer, I did the freaks list, Jonah Williams, we talked about him kind of being a unicorn, right? This is a guy that can play Major League Baseball, do all that type of stuff. Well, reports are coming out of Austin that he is going to play baseball this spring for the Longhorns. Apparently, he's throwing 95 miles per hour now. They're going to use him in the outfield. Coop, you dig back into his senior tape, just what he was able to do at Galveston Ball High School. That's where Mike Evans went to school. I think this guy is going to make some splash plays in 2025 for the Longhorns. He's just too good, too talented, too unique not to find a way to get him on the field. So the first one for me, Jonah Williams, certainly a name to know as you try to calibrate for this upcoming college football season.
Can I ask you a question? A guy that kind of comes to mind. They're not so physically similar. Versatility-wise, they are. Malachi Starks, can you compare those two players a little bit for me? Both of those guys coming out. And now, we just talked about Starks being a potential first-round draft pick, as we talked about Daniel Jeremiah's first-round mock draft. But that name comes to mind when I think about Jonah Williams, Malachi Starks.
Yeah, Kyle Hamilton's been thrown out there as well. Isaiah Simmons. I like it, Cooper, because Malachi Starks, #1 freak in the class of 2022. Jonah Williams, #1 freak in the class of 2025 for me. I think Jonah's just a little bit bigger, longer, right? Malachi Starks, you could play that guy in all 5 spots in the secondary. Really good in man-to-man coverage. I think Jonah Williams, maybe a little bit of a question mark there. If there's a weakness, a hole in his game, hey, can he match up with the fast slot receivers? I think that's an area where we're still kind of wondering. But, man, again, with his athletic juice, we don't come across players like this too often.
All right, the next one's pretty interesting because it's not typical to be caught sleeping on a 5-star. And I'm not saying that's what we were doing as a group. Me, as an individual, maybe a little bit. Dakorien Moore is a guy that we have known for so long that I think it's easy to maybe kind of overlook him a little bit and say, oh, he's hovering around 5'10". Yeah, he's an explosive kid. Yeah, he's got production. He's the type of guy that is very quick to remind you the way that he did at the Polynesian Bowl, just how dynamic of a kid he can be and how special he can be as soon as next year.
And I think it's the way he's wired, Cooper, which is why I'm just kind of buying as much stock as I can in Dakorien Moore. He's out there in Hawaii, right? They were light on defensive backs. Talk with Greg Biggins on our scouting team, was out there watching practices. Dakorien Moore flipped over and was playing some DB, right? He didn't have to do that. I mean, most 5-star prospects, they're not even going to lace up the cleats, but Dakorien Moore was doing that. You mentioned his performance in the Polynesian Bowl. He had that epic one-handed catch at the end of the game over 2 defenders, gets into the end zone. This is someone where we've kind of knocked his size a little bit, right? He's kind of a pint-sized playmaker, but having sized him up at the Under Armour All-America game, he's got some ready-to-play bulk, Cooper. And you think about Oregon, right? Losing Tez Johnson. We'll see Dante Moore, what he looks like in that offense in 2025. I think Dakorien Moore, out of all these wide receivers, right? It's not a generational group like the 2024 cycle, but I do think Dakorien Moore is going to find his way onto the field. He's just too talented. Also had a punt return for a touchdown to open up the scoring in that Under Armour All-America game.
All right, you made a pretty funny comment to me before the show. You said, hey, I was watching the AFC Championship. Those guys that block for Josh Allen, like they're not pretty, they're bad bodies, they're functional athletes. They get after it a little bit. Obviously, the unit is very, very good there up in Buffalo. But it brought up the point, like Michael Fasusi, who we tagged as this raw kid, now the number one offensive tackle in the country. Drew checks every box imaginable from a physical trait standpoint. You got to feel better about it, especially after seeing some of the linemen in the transfer portal, Isaiah World, Howard Sampson, Xavier Chaplin. You look at Fasusi and you're like, all right, I feel pretty good about this guy. He's in the 9 lives club, right, as we like to call it.
2025 is the year of the beef, okay? That's what I'm dubbing it right now. Now that we've gone through this entire cycle, we love these offensive tackles. We love these offensive linemen. I don't think we've ever been so high on so many different big bodies, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. And you're right, Cooper. I was watching the NFL playoffs over the weekend. Yeah, the Eagles, the Bills, good offensive lines, the Chiefs. They have functional athletes, but a lot of those guys, the frames kind of leave a little bit to be desired. You look at Michael Fasusi, saw him in Orlando at the Under Armour All-America game, another kid that went out to Hawaii for the Polynesian Bowl, and he's the first off the bus type of individual. He is the eye catcher. He's how you want them to look. What stands out about Fasusi, he's got the highest vertical jump out of any player over 280 pounds. Coop, what also really stands out to me about Michael Fasusi, I think he's better in the run game right now than he is in the pass game. And you think about him as an athlete, his foot quickness, reactionary skills, that's a scary thought once it comes all together. So yeah, Michael Fasusi, one of our favorite offensive tackles. But again, 2025, year of the beef. Last year, 2024, was the year of the wide receiver. I don't know how many of these big boys are going to play as true freshmen, but I think a few years down the line, we're going to look up 2025. Those mock drafts going to be full of these offensive tackles.
Oh, 100%, without a doubt. You know what's funny about the rankings is you're piecing together, who are the top guys going to be, and back and forth. And Fasusi's a guy that we love, and certainly I think the more you talk about him, the more you realize as a group what the consensus is there, Drew. And like you mentioned, I mean, a handful of guys, right? 9 guys potentially in the top 32 here. David Sanders, Andrew Babalola, you go down the list. Very, very talented group. Drew, another guy I want to talk about, a guy that you've been a champion of for a really, really long time. Hayden Lowe had a great week in San Antonio. We're really excited that we even got him there, to see him there. Just your thoughts on that player in the postseason that he had.
Oh, Coop, he's technically, he's young. He could be a 2026 recruit. And we were kind of looking for some edge rushers. Hayden Lowe has been a scouting crush of mine behind the scenes throughout the cycle. 16 sacks as a senior at Oaks Christian High School. And you want a player comp for Hayden Lowe. How about another former Oaks Christian product, Kayvon Thibodeau, who was a first-round pick? This guy is a late bloomer. And Cooper, what really sold us, I think, on Hayden Lowe, yeah, we love the first step there in San Antonio. We loved his ability to kind of win with speed and power. But the measurements, 34-inch arms, right? We're in NFL draft season right now. You see these measurements getting thrown around all over the place. 34 is green, and that matters with Hayden Lowe. I think he's got a ton of developmental upside. Is he going to be a day one guy like a Dylan Stewart, like a Colin Simmons? I don't know. We'll see what the reports are after spring practices there at Miami. But this is a guy that has a chance to be a sack artist on Saturdays and then eventually on Sundays.
Uncanny, too, the resemblance in Kayvon Thibodeau. I think, Lowe's going to be one of those guys probably going to put on 20 pounds, be a 285-pound, 5 technique, a guy that can do a lot of different things, knows how to win. Drew, the last 2 minutes here of this segment, I want to focus on 2 guys. Brame, who I think a lot of us kind of got our attention turned on to in the Polynesian Bowl. We liked him before, but it was a good reminder of the skill set of what he's able to do in the passing game. And then Husan Longstreet, you want to talk about a guy that's been up for debate there on the back of the top 32. Your impressions, those 2 guys, our team got to see him in Hawaii, but really just kind of a pulse check on how you see those 2 players.
I mentioned 2025, year of the beef, right? I think another position where it's top heavy, loaded with some potential game wreckers, is tight end. And Brame, we'll see where he slots into the top 5 of the tight end rankings. But this guy in Josh Heupel's offense with Nico Iamaleava, right? They want to run the football, but a lot of 12 personnel. He's someone that you can leak out of the backfield, but I also think he can supplement a passing attack. He kind of reminds me of Theo Johnson, who was at Penn State now with the New York Giants. Very similar players. What I also like about Brame, Cooper, 3 punt return touchdowns as a senior there in Kansas. He is a name to know, right? You play college football fantasy, keep an eye on Deshaun Brame, right? If you got a draft coming up this offseason. And then Husan Longstreet. Cooper, we go back and forth with these quarterbacks. Hey, if we label them as a 5-star prospect, we're going to have to live with it, right? Not for the next 1 to 2 years, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the line. He's someone to me where I think the good is really, really good. And we saw that out there in Hawaii at the Polynesian Bowl. Started the game like 9 of 9 passing. And yeah, soft defense. But you think about the traits, what Husan Longstreet brings to the table. You know, I'm falling more and more in love with him. Big 11-inch hands. He can throw it as fast as anyone in the class. My comp for him has long been Jalen Milroe, right? Because the two balls that kind of draw you in. They're really, really pretty. He has these excellent stretches of play. Got to get more consistent. I think Jalen Milroe, not in a lot of first-round mocks, but he's sitting there in round 2. All it takes is one team to fall in love with him. I'm excited to see what Lincoln Riley's going to get out of Husan Longstreet there at USC.
Yeah, a little erratic, no shortage of talent, though, and he's going to the right place. I mean, you can say a lot of things about Lincoln Riley. He knows how to develop that position.